Within the opulent and privileged halls of Jefferson Academy, two dangerous illusions silently thrived. The first: a black child must be lying if he says his father works at the Pentagon. The second: prestigious schools are immune to national threats. Both beliefs shattered in an instant on Parent Day. Just as Miss Anderson's smug smile hadn't yet faded, Jonathan Carter walked into the classroom, not as a janitor or administrative staff member, as they had assumed, but as a quiet strategist of national security, a man tasked with protecting America from threats few could even imagine. Have you ever witnessed the look in someone's eyes when they realize they've underestimated you? Imagine that feeling, a mix of sweet vindication and chilling warning. From the corner of the classroom, young Malik watched quietly. A flicker of pride passed through his eyes, quickly replaced by a rising unease. His father wasn't just there to clear his name. He had come to address a threat stealthily creeping into the school, a place where truth had never been welcomed until it walked in, bearing security clearance that no one here could have imagined. So what do you think? Could it be that the very people we dismiss are the ones silently protecting us every day? Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. Tomorrow's special episode will reveal a secret you won't be able to look away from. My mom just met 3 senators yesterday, Sophia Green chimed in proudly, not one to be outshined. The classroom buzzed with one-upmanship when the bell rang and Ms. Anderson walked in, at the perfect moment, as if the stage had been set just for her entrance. All elegant, her golden hair tied back in an immaculate bun, and her outfit unmistakable, designer from head to toe. At 45, she was a Jefferson Academy icon, a teacher of 2 decades, who had once tutored the children of not one but 2 former presidents. "Good morning, class." Her voice was soft but carried an unmistakable undertone of authority, the kind of tone only those who teach and judge at the same time seem to possess. "I hope you're ready for today's presentations." Her gaze swept the room, pausing just a second longer on 2 students, Malik and Ethan. Malik was familiar with that look, the look of someone who expected little from you. For other students, Ms. Anderson offered challenges and expectations, but with him, her tone always held the condescension one might use with a 6-year-old. "We'll go in alphabetical order by last name. Carter, you're up first." Her tone was as neutral as a weather report. Malik's heart sank. He wasn't mentally prepared to go first. Swallowing hard, he stepped forward, feeling the laser-like attention of 24 classmates on him. "My name is Malik Carter," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "Today I'll be presenting about my father's job." "Speak up, Malik," Miss Anderson reminded him, her eyes cold. It wasn't a request. It was a judgment. Malik took a deep breath and raised his voice. "My dad's name is Jonathan Carter, and he works at the Pentagon." Silence. Then a burst of snickers from Tyler, spreading through the class like wildfire. Half the students began to cover their mouths to hide their laughter. And Ms. Anderson? She didn't stop it. In fact, the corners of her mouth curled into a mocking smile. "The Pentagon? Really, Malik?" Her voice was saccharine, wrapped in sugar but sharp as a blade. Malik nodded, confused. "Yes, ma'am. He's worked there for 8 years." "Oh, has he now?" Ms. Anderson raised an eyebrow as if listening to a fairy tale. "And what does he do there? Is he the president?" She turned to the class with an exaggerated wink, like she was delivering the punchline to a comedy skit. The room erupted with laughter. Malik felt his face burn. "No, ma'am. He works in security." "Of course he does," she interrupted, her voice sweet but icy. "Next time, let's stick to the truth instead of trying to impress, okay?" Malik stood frozen, a small child on a big stage. "But I am telling the truth." His voice faded like a flame losing oxygen. "All right, Malik, you may sit down," Ms. Anderson said briskly, her tone as final as a verdict. "We have many more presentations to get through today." Malik returned to his seat in silence, his feet heavy as stone. The giggles hadn't stopped, and he could hear Tyler whisper behind him, "The Pentagon? His dad's probably a janitor or something." Suddenly Ethan, the only friend who had always stood by Malik, raised his hand. Sanderson, Malik's not lying. I've seen his dad's ID badge. Mrs. Anderson's face tightened, her faint smile twitching at the corners. That's enough, Ethan. Unless you'd like to join Malik in detention for disrupting class. Ethan looked down, his face flushed with a mix of anger and helplessness. He glanced over at Malik, a look that was part apology, part defiance. The entire day passed like a foggy dream. Malik drifted through his classes like a ghost, the shame from that morning clinging to him like a shadow he couldn't shake. All he wanted was to go home, shut the door behind him, and forget the day had ever happened. Jonathan was already waiting in the car. One glance was all it took for him to understand. His son had been through something heavy. Tough day? He asked as Malik opened the door and sank into the passenger's seat. Yeah, Malik replied softly, eyes fixed on the window as though searching for an escape in the blurred scenery. The two sat in silence for most of the drive. Finally, Jonathan spoke. You want to talk about it? Malik hesitated, then the words poured out like water breaking through a dam. We had to give presentations today about our parents' jobs. I said you worked at the Pentagon, and the whole class laughed. Even Ms. Anderson. She acted like I made it up. Jonathan's grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly, but his voice remained calm. I see. She made me look like a liar in front of everyone, Malik continued, his voice catching. Why have you never come to career day? Maybe if you had, they'd believe me. You know why, Malik? Jonathan said, eyes fixed on the road. My job doesn't make that kind of thing easy. It's not fair, Malik said, nearly yelling. Everyone else's parents get to come. The car turned into their driveway. Jonathan shut off the engine, then turned to his son. People doubt what they don't understand, Malik. But sometimes, being underestimated is an advantage. What's the advantage in being called a liar? Malik shot back, voice sharp. Before Jonathan could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted immediately, his eyes sharpening, his focus total. I need to take this, he said, voice dropping into a professional tone. Head inside. Start your homework. We'll talk more tonight. Malik climbed out silently, slinging his backpack over his shoulder and heading inside. Through the living room window, he saw his father still in the car, phone to his ear, making decisive gestures as though orchestrating a mission. That evening, as Malik worked on math homework at the kitchen table, he heard his father's voice coming from the office. Tense, low. I understand the consequences? No, that's unacceptable. It needs to be dealt with immediately. Curious, Malik crept closer. The office door was slightly ajar, something that almost never happened, especially when work was involved. I'll handle it myself. Yes, tomorrow morning, Jonathan said firmly, not leaving room for argument. Malik backed away just as he heard the call end. Moments later, Jonathan stepped out. His face was tight with tension until he saw his son. Then, like someone flipped a switch, his expression softened. Finished your homework? He asked, voice gentle, as if the storm from moments before had never happened. Almost, Malik said. Are you okay? Jonathan nodded. Just some work stuff, nothing you need to worry about. That night, sleep eluded Malik. He tiptoed out of bed to get some water, but as he passed his bedroom window, something outside caught his eye. Under the faint glow of the street lamp, a black SUV sat idling across the street. A man in a dark suit stepped out, said something into a wrist-mount device that looked like a radio, then scanned the area before getting back in the vehicle. A chill ran down Malik's spine. He darted to his dad's room and knocked softly. Dad, there's a strange car outside. I think someone's watching our house. Jonathan was still awake. He opened the door and went straight to the window. His eyes locked on the vehicle, but his face showed no surprise. It's okay, he said calmly, placing a hand on Malik's shoulder. Go back to bed. But who are they? Why are they watching us? Malik, Jonathan said firmly, some things the less you know the better. Trust me. Now go to sleep. Reluctantly, Malik returned to his room, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. The black SUV, the tense phone call, the humiliation at school. All of it looped endlessly in his head. The next morning, the alarm clock blared insistently. For a brief moment, Malik hoped yesterday had just been a dream, But then Miss Anderson's mocking smile came rushing back like a splash of cold water. Downstairs, he found a handwritten note from his father. "Have to leave early. Miss Thompson will take you to school. Have a great day, Dad." Jonathan leaving before dawn wasn't unusual, but today it felt especially disappointing. Malik had hoped they could talk more, maybe even convince his dad to speak to Miss Anderson. At exactly 7:30, Ms. Thompson, their sweet elderly neighbor, arrived in her familiar, worn-down Volvo. She chatted the whole ride about her rose garden and her grandchildren, while Malik stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the passing streets. "Your dad works a lot," she said as they pulled up to Jefferson Academy. "But it's important work. This country needs people like him." Malik looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "You know what my dad does?" Miss Thompson smiled mysteriously. "I've lived next door to you for 6 years, sweetheart. I've noticed plenty." Before Malik could ask more, the car came to a stop. The moment passed like a butterfly flitting past the window. Meanwhile, miles away, Jonathan Carter sat in a secure conference room deep inside the Pentagon. Gone were the casual clothes. He now wore a sharp, tailored suit, his security badge clearly displayed. Around the table sat 6 others, 3 military officers and 3 civilian analysts, all visibly tense. "It was a sophisticated cyber attack," said a woman with short silver hair. "They hit multiple systems at once, but the main target was the SCADA control network." "Any leads on who's behind it?" a Marine Corps colonel asked. "Not yet," she replied, "but the malware shares characteristics with previous attacks linked to—" She was interrupted by a young aide rushing in, whispering urgently into Jonathan's ear. His expression turned to ice. "When did this happen?" he asked, voice suddenly taut. "Just a few minutes ago, sir. The system flagged it because it involved your personal security credentials." Jonathan shot to his feet. "I need to leave immediately. There's been an unauthorized access attempt at Jefferson Academy's database." Everyone in the room looked around in confusion. "Jefferson Academy?" the colonel repeated. "My son goes there," Jonathan answered curtly. "And someone just tried to breach the school's security system using the exact same method as the cyber attacks we're investigating." Meanwhile, at Jefferson Academy, Malik was doing his best to disappear in Miss Anderson's classroom. After the humiliation of the day before, all he wanted was to get through the day without drawing attention. Miss Anderson was reviewing the presentations, lavishing praise on her favorite students while offering only perfunctory, cold comments to the rest. "Tyler, your father's work in real estate is truly shaping the future of this city," she said with glowing admiration. "Sophia, it's amazing that your mother plays such a key role in shaping healthcare policy at such a high level." When she reached Malik's presentation, her smile turned painfully sweet. "Malik, imagination is a beautiful thing," she said in a sugary voice laced with sarcasm. "But these presentations are supposed to be based on facts." The class erupted in quiet giggles, and Malik wanted nothing more than to sink into his chair and vanish. From across the room, Ethan shot him a look of sympathy. After class, as they walked down the hallway toward the cafeteria, Ethan tried to cheer Malik up. "Don't let it get to you, Malik. She always plays favorites." "Easy for you to say," Malik muttered. "She didn't call you a liar in front of everyone." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said in a low voice, "My dad lost his job yesterday. The factory shut down. My mom said if he can't find something new, we might have to move." Malik immediately felt guilty for wallowing in self-pity. "I'm really sorry, Ethan. That sucks." Ethan shrugged, trying to appear strong. "It's okay. We'll figure something out." As they entered the cafeteria, Malik happened to glance out the window. A woman in a long coat was standing across the street, her gaze scanning the entire school grounds. "Who's that lady?" Malik asked, pointing. Ethan squinted, probably waiting for someone. But Malik kept watching. The woman raised a small device that looked like a camera, snapped a few photos of the main building, then walked off briskly, her steps purposeful. There was something about the way she moved, alert, calculated, and always in control, that reminded Malik of his father. That afternoon, when Jonathan picked him up from school, Malik couldn't take his eyes off him. Things that once seemed normal now felt strangely out of place. Why would a desk worker get phone calls at midnight, drive a blacked-out SUV, and constantly scan his surroundings like he was on a secret mission? "Dad," Malik began, "what exactly do you do at the Pentagon?" Jonathan kept his eyes on the road. "I told you, I work in security." "I know, but what does that actually mean? What do you do every day? What kind of security?" A faint smile crossed Jonathan's face, part pride, part something more guarded. "Lots of meetings, lots of reports. Pretty boring stuff, honestly," he said, trying to sound casual. "Then why are people watching our house?" Malik pressed, eyes sharp. Jonathan's smile vanished. "Who told you someone was watching? I saw them last night, and sometimes there's a car parked outside, people sitting in it but never getting out." Silence. Then Jonathan spoke, his voice lower now. "There are things, Malik, that the less you know about, the better. I'm not saying that to hide things. I'm saying it to keep you safe. But why would it be dangerous for me to know what you do?" "I didn't say it's dangerous," Jonathan corrected gently. "I said it's safer if you don't. And those are two very different things." Before Malik could say more, his tablet suddenly lit up in his lap. The screen flickered with a strange string of characters, then vanished in an instant. "What was that?" Jonathan snapped, eyes narrowing. I don't know. Just a weird message popped up and disappeared," Malik stammered. Jonathan's grip on the wheel tightened. "When we get home, I want to check it immediately." Once they arrived, Jonathan spent nearly an hour running advanced diagnostics from his personal laptop, his eyes intense, as if he were tracking a piece of a much larger puzzle. "Seems like everything's fine now," he said at last, handing the tablet back, but the crease between his brows didn't relax. "Listen closely, Malik. If anything strange happens at school, anything at all, you call me immediately. Got it?" Malik nodded, his mind spinning. "Dad? Is something going on?" Jonathan placed a hand on his son's shoulder and looked him straight in the eyes. "Maybe not, but it's better to be prepared than to be sorry." The next morning, Ms. Anderson still hadn't let up on Malik. During a lesson on famous landmarks in Washington, D.C., as the topic turned to the Pentagon, she glanced at Malik with a sly tone. "Malik, since your father claims to work at the Pentagon, maybe you can share something we won't find in a textbook?" The room went silent, but several students' faces lit up in anticipation. They were waiting for another awkward moment. Malik was no longer the trembling boy from the day before. He had spent the whole evening reading everything he could about the Pentagon. "It has twice as many bathrooms as needed," Malik said clearly, "because when it was built in the 1000s, 940s, Virginia was still segregated. They had to design separate restrooms for white and black workers." A brief silence followed. Miss Anderson's smile noticeably faded. "That's accurate," she said, her tone stiff, "though not exactly related to architectural design." "And there's a hot dog stand in the courtyard," Malik continued, his voice now tinged with excitement. "During the Cold War, the Soviets thought it was the entrance to a secret bunker because so many high-ranking officials visited it daily. But they were just getting lunch." Laughter bubbled up. Real laughter, not mocking. Malik felt a warm surge of confidence rising in his chest. "That's enough, Malik. Let's get back to the lesson," Miss Anderson said, lips pressed into a thin line. But that small victory stayed with Malik the rest of the day, like sunlight after a storm. When the dismissal bell rang, Miss Anderson called him to stay behind. "Malik," she began, voice sugary but eyes cold, "I understand you're going through a phase of embellishment. Many children do. But if you keep pushing this Pentagon story, it could become disruptive." "I'm not making anything up," Malik said firmly. Ms. Anderson leaned in slightly, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. "If your father really works there, why not invite him to our upcoming Parent Day? That would clear things up, wouldn't it?" The challenge in her voice was sharp, cutting through her sweet exterior like a razor. And Malik knew this was the turning point. She fully expected him to back down, admit he'd been lying, or come up with an excuse about why his father couldn't attend. But Malik didn't flinch. He looked her straight in the eye and said confidently, "Fine, my dad will be there." A flicker of surprise crossed Ms. Anderson's face, quickly masked by her usual smug smile. "Wonderful. I look forward to meeting him." That evening, Malik approached his father with a mix of tension and determination. Jonathan was sitting at the kitchen table, eyes fixed on his laptop screen, his face focused. "Dad," Malik began hesitantly, "next week is Parent Day at school. I really need you to come." Jonathan looked up, still distracted. "Parent Day. You know how crazy my schedule is." "I know," Malik interrupted, then took a deep breath and explained everything. From Ms. Anderson's public humiliation to her condescending dare. Every word came out like a blade, carving out the frustration that had been bottled up inside him. Jonathan's face shifted from distracted to attentive, then to something unreadable. But Malik recognized that look. He'd only seen it a few times. It was the look his father wore when he was truly angry, but keeping it tightly contained. Cold, sharp, controlled. "I understand," Jonathan said quietly. He closed the laptop. "What day?" "Next Friday," Malik replied, a flicker of hope in his voice. "You'll come?" Jonathan nodded firmly. "I'll be there." "Really?" Malik could barely believe it. His dad had never agreed to a school event so easily. "Really? It's time I met your teacher." A wave of relief washed over Malik. Finally, the truth would come to light. That night, from his office, Jonathan made another encrypted phone call. Malik couldn't hear everything, but he clearly caught two words: Jefferson Academy and security protocol. Just before the door clicked shut, outside, the familiar black SUV was parked in its usual spot. But this time, Malik didn't feel afraid. In fact, he felt oddly reassured. Something was definitely happening, something his father hadn't told him. But deep down, Malik sensed it might be his opportunity. As he closed his eyes that night, he imagined Miss Anderson's face when Jonathan walked into her classroom. For the first time since the humiliating presentation, Malik actually looked forward to the next day. The days leading up to Parent Day crawled by, each one heavy with anticipation. In class, Miss Anderson often glanced at Malik with a knowing smirk, her half-smile always at the ready. Twice Miss Anderson made sarcastic remarks about vivid imaginations, without naming names, but her eyes never strayed. "She doesn't think your dad's gonna show up," Ethan whispered during Thursday's math class. "Will," Malik replied, his voice firmer than he felt. Even though Jonathan had promised, Malik knew his dad's schedule was never predictable, but this time he wanted to believe. Just last month, Jonathan had missed Malik's science fair due to an emergency at work. So, the night before Parent Day, Malik could barely eat his dinner. "You're still coming tomorrow, right?" he asked, voice trembling slightly. Jonathan looked up from his plate. "Didn't I already say I would?" "Yeah, but your work always has surprises." "Not tomorrow," Jonathan said firmly. "I've cleared everything." Malik exhaled, relieved. "Ms. Anderson doesn't believe you work at the Pentagon. She thinks I made it all up." Something flickered in Jonathan's eyes, a steely look Malik rarely saw at home. "Is that so?" he muttered. "She makes fun of me in front of the whole class." Jonathan set his fork down, the movement slow but heavy with weight. "Tell me more about Miss Anderson." Malik told him everything: her favoritism toward wealthy students, how she constantly undermined him, and the way she seemed to enjoy making him squirm. Jonathan listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with every word. At the end, he simply nodded. "I understand." That night, Malik noticed the door to his father's home office was slightly ajar. Inside, Jonathan was working on his laptop, but it wasn't spreadsheets this time. Malik caught a quick glimpse of a familiar photo. Miss Anderson, her image displayed on what looked like an internal personnel system. "You're still awake?" Jonathan asked. Not scolding, just noticing. "Just getting some water," Malik replied, unsure of what he'd just seen. Or why. The next morning, Malik came downstairs and froze. Jonathan was already dressed, not in his usual casual business wear, but in a sharply pressed black suit and a dark blue tie. He looked formal, commanding. On the kitchen counter lay a leather portfolio and an ID badge Malik had never seen before. "Is that your Pentagon ID?" Malik asked, reaching toward it. Jonathan gently pulled his hand back. "Yes, but it always stays with me." During breakfast, Jonathan kept checking his watch, as if timing everything down to the second. When they got in the car, Jonathan's phone rang. He answered briefly. "We're en route. ETA 20 minutes. They rode in silence. Finally, Malik asked quietly, "Dad, are you okay? You seem different today." Jonathan gave a faint smile. "I'm fine, just focused. Are you mad about Miss Anderson?" "Not mad," he said after a pause. "But I don't like anyone calling my son a liar." As they neared Jefferson Academy, Malik noticed something strange. 3 black SUVs, identical to the one often parked near their home, were stationed along the street. Beside them stood men in black suits and dark sunglasses, even though the sky was overcast. "Dad, who are those guys?" Malik asked. Jonathan glanced at them briefly. "Support." He turned smoothly into the guest parking lot and parked neatly. As they got out, Malik felt a mix of tension and excitement swirling inside him. Part of him couldn't wait to see Miss Anderson's face, but another part feared something might go wrong. "Don't worry," Jonathan said, as if reading his son's mind. "Everything will be fine." Inside, the school hallways were even busier than usual. Parent Day at Jefferson was a big event, an unspoken networking opportunity for the elite families. Malik spotted Tyler's father in a tailored Italian suit, shaking hands with another businessman. It looked more like a miniature conference than a school event. They reached the reception desk. When Jonathan presented his ID, the receptionist froze. "Mr. Carter?" she stammered, her polished smile faltering for a second. "We weren't expecting—" "Ah, yes. It's an honor to have you with us today," she quickly recovered, trying to maintain a cheerful tone. "Thank you," Jonathan said politely. "Would you point me to Miss Anderson's classroom?" "Of course. Room 112. Straight down this hallway, then make a right." As they walked, Malik noticed the curious stares following them from other parents and staff. Jonathan's ID badge, emblazoned with the Pentagon emblem, stood out boldly against his suit jacket, drawing attention like a magnet. "Dad, why is everyone looking at us?" Malik whispered. "Because people are always drawn to what they don't fully understand," Jonathan replied calmly, as if solving an equation. They arrived at room 1012, where a group of parents and students had already gathered. At the front of the classroom stood Miss Anderson, perfectly composed in a cream silk blouse, a navy skirt, and the practiced smile of someone who had welcomed hundreds of high-profile parents. When she saw Malik, her smile briefly curled with satisfaction. Clearly, she thought he had come alone, but when her eyes shifted to Jonathan, taking in the tailored suit, commanding presence, and the gleaming security badge on his chest, her smile froze instantly. "This Anderson," Malik said, a trace of pride in his voice. "This is my father, Jonathan Carter. He works at the Pentagon." Jonathan extended his hand. "Miss Anderson, I've heard a lot about you." She shook it reflexively, her face shifting from pale to visibly unsettled. "Mr. Carter, it's an honor to welcome you to Jefferson Academy." "Thank you," Jonathan replied smoothly. "Malik mentioned that you had a particular interest in his presentation about my line of work." Mrs. Anderson's usual composure began to falter. "Well, yes. Children do sometimes have vivid imaginations about their parents' jobs." "That's true," Jonathan nodded, "but in this case I can assure you Malik wasn't exaggerating." Before she could respond, the classroom door opened. A man in a dark suit stepped in, scanned the room quickly, and approached Jonathan. "Sir," he said quietly, "we need you to step outside. It's urgent." Jonathan nodded, then turned to Miss Anderson. "My apologies, I need to step out for a moment." "Government emergency." He exited with the man, leaving Malik standing beside his teacher, who now looked like a wooden statue trying to hide a jolt of panic. "All right," Miss Anderson said, trying to regain control. Let's begin our Parent Day activities. 30 minutes later, she led the class through presentations and discussions, but her former confidence had evaporated. Her eyes kept flicking toward the door, where Jonathan now stood, speaking with not one, but 3 men in dark suits. Inside the classroom, parents and students whispered among themselves, sneaking glances at Malik. For the first time, he wasn't being mocked or ignored. He was at the center of a storm of curiosity and admiration. "Hey," Ethan leaned over, whispering, "your dad really does work at the Pentagon, huh?" "Told you," Malik said, smiling, unable to hide his joy. Their conversation was interrupted when the classroom door opened again. This time it was Principal Hayes, looking flustered. He scanned the room quickly before locking eyes with Miss Anderson. "Ah, Miss Anderson," he began, his tone overly cheerful. "I see you've already met Mr. Carter." "Yes," she replied stiffly, struggling to maintain her composure. "We were just discussing—" "Wonderful, wonderful," Principal Hayes cut in, his voice betraying both excitement and nervousness. He turned to the class. "Students, we have a special treat today. Mr. Carter has graciously agreed to speak with us about his work in the government." Miss Anderson's face froze as if flash-frozen in place. Clearly, this was not part of the carefully scripted plan she had envisioned for Parent Day. Principal Hayes gestured for Jonathan to step forward. "Mr. Carter is a senior national security strategist at the Pentagon," he said, emphasizing every word as if delivering a message straight to the teacher. "We are truly honored to have him here today." Jonathan stepped up with the poise of someone accustomed to addressing far more intimidating audiences. The room went completely silent. All eyes were on him. "Thank you, Principal Hayes," Jonathan began, his voice warm and steady. "First, let me say how proud I am of my son, Malik. He has shown a level of resilience and character that many adults could learn from." Malik's chest swelled. A sense of pride, long overdue, filled him to the brim. "For security reasons, I can't share specifics of my job," Jonathan continued. "But I can tell you a little about what we do at the Pentagon. Unlike what you see in the movies, most of our work revolves around analysis, forecasting, and prevention. Every day, thousands of specialists work quietly to identify and neutralize threats before they ever reach the public." As Jonathan spoke, Malik noticed Ms. Anderson slowly retreating toward the back of the room, as if trying to disappear from the space she had once ruled, like her personal stage. "There's one thing I've learned over the course of my career," Jonathan said, his voice carrying with purpose. "Prejudice, judging people or situations based on assumptions instead of facts, is one of the greatest threats to security. We overlook things that don't fit our preconceptions, and that creates blind spots, the most dangerous flaw in any defense system." Some parents shifted uncomfortably. Miss Anderson's face turned crimson. Everyone knew Jonathan wasn't just talking about national security. "The people who protect you aren't always visible," he continued. "But that doesn't mean they're not there. The most effective acts of protection often happen before you even realize you needed them." A hand shot up. It was Tyler, the boy who had laughed the loudest during Malik's original presentation. "Yes?" Jonathan nodded. "Sir, have you ever been in a gunfight?" Tyler asked, a mix of awe and skepticism in his voice. A faint smile flickered across Jonathan's face. "As I said earlier, our goal is to act before a situation spirals out of control. But yes, I have faced dangerous situations. The key is always preparation, teamwork, and—" Jonathan suddenly stopped. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at the screen, and in an instant, his expression shifted from composed to alert. To most people in the room, the change might have gone unnoticed. But Malik recognized it instantly. It was the same look, sharp eyes, a hardened face, that he'd seen on nights when his dad took emergency calls. But this time, Jonathan transitioned smoothly. "The key is preparation, teamwork, and constant vigilance. On that note, I need to check in with my team. Principal Hayes, may I borrow you for a moment?" Principal Hayes nodded, clearly caught off guard but unwilling to decline a man of Jonathan's stature. As the classroom door closed behind them, a wave of excited whispers broke out. "Your dad is seriously cool," Ethan whispered to Malik. "Did you see Ms. Anderson's face when he brought up prejudice?" Malik nodded, but his eyes stayed on the window, watching his father, who was now showing something on his phone to Principal Hayes, whose face was growing more tense by the second. Back in the classroom, Miss Anderson tried to regain control. "All right, everyone, let's return to our activity. Parents, please join your children for the next project." But her voice had lost its authority. No one was really paying attention. All eyes were still on the door, waiting for Jonathan to return. A few minutes later, Principal Hayes re-entered alone. His face was drawn tight, as if he'd just seen something deeply unsettling. He bent down and whispered something into Miss Anderson's ear. Her face drained of color. Her eyes widened. "Class," she said, her voice slightly too loud, "we're going to take a short break. Please remain in the classroom until further notice." "What's going on?" Malik asked Ethan, an uneasy knot forming in his stomach. "No idea," Ethan replied, worried. "But your dad? He looked serious." Outside, Jonathan Carter stood in the hallway, eyes fixed on his government-issued secure phone. An alert flashed across the screen, sending a chill down his spine. "Reach detected location. Jefferson Academy." "How long ago?" he asked the agent who had delivered the update. "Just happened, sir. Our cybersecurity team caught it during routine surveillance. The alarm triggered immediately due to the security code you embedded into the school's system." Jonathan nodded, eyes narrowing. After the last incident, he had secretly installed a monitoring system across the school's entire digital infrastructure. A move some had called excessive, now it looked like foresight. What's the nature of the breach? They may hit multiple points simultaneously, starting with the security camera network, then moving to the electronic door locks. The method matches the group we've been tracking for months. Jonathan's jaw tightened. His team had been trailing a foreign intelligence network operating covertly inside the U.S., always targeting defense sites or military contractors. For them to suddenly switch focus to a private school, this was no coincidence. "Get Agent Ramirez on the line. Initiate Omega-level lockdown protocol for the entire building." As the agent nodded and moved off, Principal Hayes approached, his face now a perfect mask of barely contained panic. "Carter, what's happening? Should we evacuate?" he asked urgently. "No," Jonathan said firmly. "For now, everyone stays where they are. I need you to initiate a soft lockdown. Keep students and staff in their rooms, doors closed but not locked. Tell them it's a drill." "You're sure?" Hayes asked, still wavering. "Absolutely. Do it now and keep it calm." The principal quickly turned to carry out the instructions. Jonathan looked toward the school's main entrance, just in time to see a familiar figure step inside. FBI agent Maria Ramirez, the woman in the trench coat Malik had once seen watching the school. "Carter," she said with a curt nod. "Interesting coincidence you happen to be here today." "I don't believe in coincidences," Jonathan replied, eyes locked on hers. "Especially not when my son's school becomes the latest target of the same group we've been tracking for months." Ramirez's expression darkened. "We have reason to believe the threat is already inside the building. The cyber attack was just the first step. Is your team in position? The perimeter is secure. All exits are guarded." "Good. Jonathan's words were cut off by the crackling of the school's PA system. "Attention all students and staff. We are initiating a temporary lockdown for safety reasons. Please remain in your current location and close all classroom doors. This is not a drill, but there is no cause for alarm." Ramirez muttered. "Yeah, that line always works." Jonathan was already moving, heading straight back to Ms. Anderson's classroom. "I need to be with my son." Inside the classroom, the announcement had the opposite effect of its intended purpose. Parents pulled out their phones, students whispered anxiously. Miss Anderson stood frozen at the front, unsure of what to do. Jonathan entered, and like a cold wind snapping people to attention, he immediately took control. "Everyone, please remain calm. This is a standard security measure." "What's going on, Mr. Carter?" one parent blurted out. "Are our children in danger?" "For now, the best thing you can do is stay calm and follow instructions," Jonathan replied evenly. "Miss Anderson, please close the blinds and lock the classroom door." She did as asked, though her hands trembled slightly as she drew the shades. Jonathan noticed Mr. Whitman, Tyler's father, eyeing him with suspicion. Does this have anything to do with your presence here today?" Whitman asked accusingly. "Did you bring this threat with you?" Before Jonathan could respond, Miss Anderson surprisingly spoke up. "Mr. Whitman, please. Mr. Carter is clearly working to ensure our safety." Jonathan gave a small nod of thanks, then turned to address the room. "I understand your concerns. Please rest assured we have security personnel throughout the building. This lockdown is precautionary." He moved to where Malik and Ethan were sitting, both looking a mix of anxious and intrigued. "Dad, what's going on?" Malik asked quietly. "Just a security issue we're addressing," Jonathan replied in a low voice. "I need you to help keep your classmates calm, okay?" Malik nodded, his eyes reflecting a rare seriousness. "Is this about your job?" Before Jonathan could answer, his phone buzzed again. He checked the message. "Suspicious package found in basement. Bomb squad en route." "I need to step out again," Jonathan whispered. "Stay here. No matter what happens, do not leave this room." As Jonathan moved toward the door, Miss Anderson approached, her usual confidence now entirely stripped away. "Mr. Carter," she murmured, her voice unsteady. "Should I be worried?" "Just keep everyone in the room," Jonathan said. "I'll return as soon as I can." Out in the hallway, Agent Ramirez was waiting, this time flanked by 2 FBI agents in tactical gear. "Bomb squad's 10 minutes out," she reported. "Techs found a suspicious backpack near the main electrical panel. Wires visible." "Take me there," Jonathan ordered. They moved quickly through the eerily quiet halls, then down the maintenance stairwell into the school's basement. 2 other agents were already on site, keeping their distance from a backpack leaning against the wall next to the electrical board. "No one touched it, right?" Jonathan asked. "Not a finger," one agent confirmed. "The building security manager spotted it during his rounds and called us immediately." Jonathan stepped closer, inspecting it without making contact. The backpack's zipper was slightly open, revealing a tangle of wires and a circuit board. "Not a bomb," he said after a moment. "This is a surveillance device. High-grade military tech. Someone's been monitoring the building from the inside." Ramirez frowned. "Why would foreign intelligence care about a private school?" "That's exactly what we need to find out," Jonathan replied, eyes narrowing. He turned to one of the agents. "I want full personnel records for anyone with access to this area, and I want all surveillance footage from the past week." "Sir, the system's been compromised. We're not sure if the data is intact." "Then find the physical backups. A facility like this has to keep them." "We need to secure the server room," Jonathan said decisively, "and account for all maintenance staff. Immediately." They headed toward the east wing when Principal Hayes rushed up to block their path. His earlier composure was long gone. "Mr. Carter, the parents are panicking. Some are trying to leave with their children. A few are yelling in the halls. Tell them that leaving now could make things more dangerous," Jonathan said firmly. "This is a matter of national security." "National security?" Hayes's eyes widened. "I need your cooperation, not your questions," Jonathan said sharply, his gaze brooking no argument. "Keep everyone in place. We'll handle the rest," he added before Hayes backed away, clearly shaken. At that moment, Ramirez received a signal in her earpiece. "We've got something," she said. "The maintenance worker has been identified as a foreign agent, and he's not in the East Wing as reported. According to the schedule, he's conducting an inspection in the West Wing." Jonathan's blood ran cold. "The West Wing has classrooms," he said slowly, "including your son's," Ramirez confirmed. Without another word, they both sprinted toward Miss Anderson's class. As they rounded the corner, Jonathan spotted a man in a gray maintenance uniform fiddling with the card reader next to Room 102. "FBI, hands in the air," Ramirez shouted, drawing her weapon. The man spun around, startled. For a split second, his eyes locked with Jonathan's. Cold, calculating. It was a look Jonathan instantly recognized, the gaze of someone highly trained. He turned and bolted. "Stay here and guard the classroom," Jonathan barked, then took off after the agent. The chase wound through Jefferson Academy's maze-like corridors, past frightened teachers peeking out from classrooms despite the lockdown. The fleeing agent clearly knew the layout, cutting down side halls and darting through shortcuts like he had rehearsed. Jonathan stayed close, following down a maintenance stairwell that led to the cafeteria. As they burst into the empty dining hall, the man suddenly spun around, blade flashing in his hand. "You should have stayed out of this, Carter," he said, his English tinged with a thick foreign accent. "Who sent you?" Jonathan asked, keeping his distance, already slipping into a defensive stance. "You already know," the man sneered. "The ones tracking your every move for months. You really thought your son would be safe here?" A cold fury rose in Jonathan's chest. "If anything happens to my son, blame yourself for enrolling him here," the man cut in. "This place is a gold mine. Kids of top officials, government contractors, data-rich targets." Suddenly, the gym doors behind him slammed open. 2 FBI agents burst in, weapons drawn. Seeing no way out, the man lunged at Jonathan, knife raised. Jonathan dodged instinctively. In one fluid motion, he twisted, grabbed the attacker's arm, and slammed him to the floor in a clean takedown. "It's over," he said, as the agents rushed in to restrain the spy. "Tell whoever sent you they picked the wrong target." Wasting no time, Jonathan turned back toward the classroom. If this operative had been watching the school, what was the real goal? More importantly, was he acting alone? As he neared room 112, Ramirez was already there, speaking urgently into her radio. "We've got another situation," she said as Jonathan approached. "Security just detected movement in the ventilation shafts near the main office, and someone's transmitting on the school's radio frequencies. A voice we don't recognize." Jonathan's eyes narrowed. "This isn't just about stealing data," he said. "This is a coordinated kidnapping attempt. They're targeting students, or multiple students," Ramirez added. "You know this place has the children of diplomats, defense officials." "Including mine," Jonathan finished, his voice low and thunderous. "We need to evacuate immediately." Just as he reached for the classroom door, a muffled explosion echoed from deeper within the building, followed by the piercing blare of the fire alarm. Inside the classroom, chaos erupted. Parents clutched their children, students screamed. Ms. Anderson stood frozen, futilely trying to restore order. "Everyone, stay calm." Jonathan stepped inside, his voice booming, cutting through the panic. "We are evacuating in an orderly fashion. Follow the FBI agents to the designated safe zone." "What just exploded?" someone shouted from the crowd. "Could be a distraction," Jonathan answered honestly. "Which is exactly why we need to move quickly, but calmly." As Ramirez began directing the evacuation, Jonathan rushed to Malik's side. "Stay right next to me," he said. "No matter what happens, do not let go." Malik nodded, eyes wide but impressively steady. "What about Ethan?" he asked. Jonathan glanced at Malik's best friend. Ethan's face was pale with fear. "He's coming with us. Both of you, hold onto my jacket, don't let go." They joined the line of evacuees being led out by the FBI. Jonathan caught sight of Miss Anderson, still standing near the back, frozen with fear. "Mrs. Anderson," he shouted. "Come with us, now." Startled by his voice, she rushed to follow. I'm sorry," she whispered as they stepped into the hallway. "I didn't believe him. I didn't believe Malik." "About you? We'll talk about that later," Jonathan said crisply. "Right now, focus on getting out safely." The hallways were now packed with students, teachers, and parents, everyone moving under the guidance of security personnel. But amid the crowd, Jonathan suddenly spotted something that made his heart drop. A man in a maintenance uniform, walking in the opposite direction of the crowd, his hand sliding into his jacket in a suspicious motion. "Ramirez!" Jonathan shouted, pointing. 3 o'clock. Ramirez gave a sharp signal. 2 agents broke formation and moved to intercept. But the man, seeing he'd been made, pulled a small device, something resembling a remote. "Get down!" Jonathan shouted, yanking Malik and Ethan to the ground, using his body as a shield. Miss Anderson dropped beside them, arms covering her head. But instead of an explosion, The lights across the entire school went out. The emergency power kicked in just seconds later, casting the hallway in an eerie red glow. "They're trying to disable the entire security system," Jonathan muttered as he pulled the two boys to their feet. Under the dim light, they pushed forward toward the exit, Jonathan holding tightly to his son and Ethan, eyes constantly scanning for danger. They were nearly at the doors when a loud crash erupted behind them. Jonathan turned enough, for another operative was grappling with two FBI agents, all three slamming into a glass display case that shattered on impact. Students screamed. Parents panicked and shoved. "Keep moving," Jonathan ordered, pushing his group toward the exit. The school's courtyard had become a full-scale response zone. Police cars, FBI vehicles, and even military trucks formed a security perimeter around the building. Groups of students and teachers were being led to safe zones where attendance was being taken. Jonathan brought Malik and Ethan to the nearest checkpoint where Ramirez was coordinating the operation. "What's the status?" he asked. "Two suspects in custody, one still unaccounted for," Ramirez answered briskly. "We found surveillance devices in the server room, the principal's office, and 3 classrooms." "Was Ms. Anderson's class one of them?" Jonathan asked. Ramirez nodded. "Primary target. According to the device logs, they've been monitoring it for at least a week." Miss Anderson, nearby and panting, looked stunned. They watching my class? But why?" "That's what we're going to figure out," Jonathan said, his eyes drifting toward the building where agents continued to sweep room by room. Malik was watching his father now, his eyes wide with fear, confusion, and realization. "This is why you couldn't come to school events, isn't it?" he asked softly. "This is what you really do." Jonathan placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "In part," he said. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you more." "Did they come here because of you?" Malik asked quietly. Before Jonathan could respond, a group of FBI agents carried a suspicious bag out of the building. They placed it far from the assembly area, and as Jonathan got a clear look, his face darkened. "That's not just a surveillance device," he told Ramirez. "It's a data extraction unit designed to siphon information from secure networks. This kind is military grade." "But what could they possibly want from a school system?" Ramirez asked. Jonathan clenched his jaw, pieces clicking into place in his mind. "Not the school's data," he said, voice low. "They use the school's network as a back door to infiltrate the home networks of government officials and defense contractors through their kids' devices, tablets, laptops, phones, which connect to both school and home networks," Ramirez finished, "creating a bridge into systems they'd never be able to access directly." "That's smart." Miss Anderson, still standing nearby, had overheard the entire exchange. Her expression was one of horror. She turned to Malik, her voice trembling. I owe you an apology, Malik. I should have believed you about your father." Malik, still reeling from the day's events, gave a small nod. Jonathan glanced at his phone. A new message appeared. The third suspect had been caught trying to escape through a service exit. The building was now secure. A wave of relief swept through the crowd of parents and staff. With the immediate threat neutralized, Jonathan suddenly found himself surrounded. People came forward to thank him, ask questions, shake his hand. Through it all, he never let go of his son's shoulder. The look they exchanged said everything. An unspoken bond forged through the trials of the day. Principal Hayes, now looking far more disheveled and weary than that morning, approached. "Mr. Carter, I don't even know how to thank you. What you did today may have saved lives." "I was just doing my job," Jonathan replied. "But if you really want to thank me, start by making sure every student at Jefferson Academy is treated fairly, regardless of where they come from." Hayes nodded, his eyes briefly drifting to Ms. Anderson, who now stood with her head lowered, face flushed with shame. Amid the lingering tension, Jonathan knelt down so he was eye level with Malik. "You did great today," he said gently. "Calm, brave, solid. I'm proud of you." Malik's face lit up. "So, can I finally tell people at school what you really do?" Jonathan laughed. For the first time all day, it was a laugh of real relief, cutting through the last of the haze. Some things are better kept between us, but I think most of the kids get the picture now. Jefferson Academy would never be the same again, and neither would Malik's place in it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the prestigious school had become an active investigation site. Yellow police tape cordoned off walkways. FBI agents combed classrooms and hallways, once symbols of learning, now scenes of a coordinated breach. Jonathan looked over the grounds, a heavy weight in his chest. This place should have been a safe haven. Instead, it had become the focal point of an international plot. Most parents had been allowed to leave after giving statements, but Jonathan, Malik, and Ethan remained, along with other officials whose children attended the school. They sat in the library, now designated as a temporary safe zone, while agents completed a full sweep of the campus. Stay? How much longer do we have to stay? Malik asked, his voice tired. The adrenaline had long worn off, leaving only exhaustion and unanswered questions. Not much longer, Jonathan reassured, checking his watch. Agent Ramirez just needs to finish processing the evidence. As if summoned by her name, Ramirez appeared in the library doorway, her trench coat replaced by a tactical FBI jacket. She motioned for Jonathan to step outside. He gave Malik's shoulder a reassuring squeeze, then followed her. "We've completed a preliminary analysis of the surveillance devices," Ramirez said quietly. "It's more complex than we expected. Military-grade encryption matches patterns we've seen before." Jonathan's expression darkened. Korea, a notorious cyber espionage network linked to foreign intelligence agencies. His team had been tracking them for months, but this was their first direct assault on a U.S. school. "What was their precise target?" Jonathan asked. "We're still parsing the data," Ramirez replied. "But it looks like they were collecting information from multiple students, then cross-referencing it with names of parents in sensitive government roles." Jonathan nodded, his expression darkening. "Is my son on the list?" Ramirez hesitated, just long enough for Jonathan to understand. "Yes," she confirmed. "His name was flagged, along with 7 other students. All of them children of national security officials." A cold fury settled in Jonathan's chest. They were using children to reach the parents. And the worst part, Ramirez led Jonathan to a table where a technician was examining a janitor's cart. "We found this in the boiler room. It wasn't just cleaning supplies." The technician opened the cart's false bottom, revealing a hidden compartment containing handcuffs, zip ties, and a small case of syringes. "Sedatives," Ramirez said, "enough to knock out multiple students." Jonathan clenched his jaw. So this wasn't just surveillance. It was a kidnapping plot, Ramirez finished. Use the kids to force their parents into compliance. An old tactic, but still effective. "I want immediate security teams assigned to every family on that list. And for Malik, I want 24/7 protection until the threat is neutralized." "Already in place," Ramirez replied. "But there's something else you need to see." She led Jonathan to another table where a recovered video from the school's backup surveillance system was playing. "This is from a secondary server. Watch the janitor, the one who tried to approach your son." Jonathan leaned in, eyes fixed on the screen. The footage showed Malik being led by the disguised man toward the boiler room. Anger surged within him, but he stayed calm, thinking like a trained operative. "There," Ramirez pointed. He turns, grabs Malik. He recognized him. "This wasn't random," Jonathan said. "He knew exactly who Malik was." He tightened his fists. "They've been watching us, not just at school, at home too." Can you feel the weight of that realization? When the battlefield breaches the sanctity of home, does Jonathan remain a strategist or become something no adversary can predict? A father willing to do whatever it takes to protect his child. "Within about a week, Malik saw Bill XUV Malik saw outside our house," Jonathan began. "Not one of ours," Ramirez confirmed. "We've reviewed all surveillance logs. No protective units were assigned to your neighborhood before today." Jonathan's mind raced with implications. If foreign agents had been watching his home, what else might they know? The covert missions he'd led? Sensitive contacts? Or worse, pathways to classified intelligence? I need to take Malik home, Jonathan said. Then sweep the entire house, every inch. We already dispatched a team, Ramirez replied. They're going room by room right now. Jonathan gave a brief nod and turned to go. But Ramirez gently grabbed his sleeve. Carter, she said, voice low. There's something else. She handed him a small photo, its edges worn as if it had been handled countless times. Jonathan took it, his heart tightening. It was him, in full combat gear, standing with a special operations team in a desert landscape. The backdrop was unmistakable. A top-secret mission in Syria 5 years ago. Almost no one had a photo of that. How did he get this? Jonathan murmured, more to himself than anyone. That's exactly what I want to know, Ramirez said. This isn't just about espionage anymore. This is personal. Jonathan quietly slid the photo into his pocket, his mind now in overdrive. Only a handful of people had access to files from that operation. If Corey had this, there was a mole deep inside the intelligence community. This stays between us, he said. I need to make some calls. When he returned to the library, Malik and Ethan were asleep, heads resting on their backpacks, young faces peaceful despite the chaos they'd endured. Colonel Anderson sat nearby, looking overwhelmed and out of place amid the busy agents. She stood quickly when she saw Jonathan approaching, clearly anxious. Mr. Carter, I truly want to apologize again for how I treated Malik. For not believing him, Jonathan replied, his voice low but sharp as steel. You didn't believe him. Why? Because of his skin color? His background? Because we don't have the wealth some of these other families do? Miss Anderson flinched like she'd been slapped. I never meant... You never meant to get caught, Jonathan cut in. Let me be clear. The way you treated my son, and any child like him, ends today. Principal Hayes has agreed to launch a full review of the school's inclusion policies, with a special focus on faculty bias. You can't... She started but stopped. She knew her footing was gone. I can, and I did, Jonathan replied, calm but final. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to take my son home. He gently roused Malik and Ethan. The boys blinked sleepily, slowly waking. Time to go. Malik rubbed his eyes. Almost, Jonathan replied. Ethan, your parents will be here any minute. As if on cue, an agent entered from the front of the library. Mr. Carter? Ethan's parents have arrived, the agent said. Ethan quickly gathered his things and turned to Malik. Today was the craziest day ever, he said, his voice a blend of amazement and lingering fear. You coming to school tomorrow? Malik looked at his dad. I'm not sure yet. We'll see, Jonathan said, non-committal. Let's just get through tonight. After Ethan left with his parents, both visibly shaken, Jonathan led Malik through the now quiet school hallway. FBI agents nodded respectfully as they passed, and Malik couldn't help but notice the people who had once doubted and dismissed them now looked at his father with something else. Respect. The same father Ms. Anderson had once mocked, assuming he was just a made-up story. Outside, the black SUVs were no longer mysterious. They were official government vehicles, ready to take father and son safely home. As they settled into the back seat, Malik finally asked the question that had been burning in him all day. Dad, who were those people? Why were they at my school? Jonathan considered his words. A father's instinct was to protect his child by shielding him from the truth, but today had made one thing clear. Silence was no longer safety. They're intelligence agents? Working for a foreign government? Jonathan said slowly. They're gathering information and possibly, he hesitated, then made the choice. His son deserved the truth. Possibly planning to kidnap students, children of individuals in sensitive government positions. Like me? Malik asked, eyes wide. Like you, Jonathan confirmed. Because of your job at the Pentagon? Jonathan nodded, watching his son's face for fear or panic, but what he saw instead was something stronger, curiosity, and a quiet determination. "So, you're not just an analyst," Malik said. "No," Jonathan admitted for the first time. "I lead a counterintelligence unit. We identify and neutralize threats to national security. That's why you never talk about your job at home or come to school events?" "In part," Jonathan said with a faint smile. "My position is classified. Keeping quiet is part of protecting operations and our family." Malik was quiet, piecing it all together. "What about Mom? Is she safe?" Jonathan smiled, touched by his son's concern. "She's fine. I spoke to her while you were sleeping. The conference in Chicago is secure, and she's being accompanied by agents. She'll be home tomorrow." The SUV turned down their street. Jonathan felt Malik tense slightly at the sight of their familiar house after such a chaotic day. "It's all right," he assured. "The house is secure now. The team's sweeping every corner." Sure enough, as the vehicle pulled into the driveway, agents were patrolling the property. One approached as they stepped out. "Sir, the sweep is complete. We found 3 listening devices, one in the living room, one in the kitchen, and one in your office. All have been disabled." "Thank you," Jonathan nodded. "Maintain full security overnight. I want agents at every entrance." "Yes, sir." Inside, everything looked the same, but Malik noticed the little things. A picture frame slightly off, a book out of place. "They were spying on us? In our house?" Malik asked quietly. Jonathan nodded, face heavy with thought. "For how long?" "We don't know. But they're gone now." He walked Malik upstairs. "Get ready for bed. It's been a long day." "I don't know if I can sleep," Malik admitted. "Try," Jonathan said gently. "I promise you're safe now." After Malik changed and brushed his teeth, Jonathan sat on the edge of the bed, something he hadn't done in a long time. Not just to keep watch, but to be present fully with his son. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you more about my job," Jonathan said softly. "I thought keeping secrets was the best way to protect you." "It's okay," Malik replied, his voice steadier than ever. "I understand now. No more secrets," Jonathan promised. "At least not about the things that matter." Malik slowly drifted off to sleep. Jonathan stayed at his side, mind still racing through the day's events. The photo from Syria lingered in his thoughts, bringing back buried memories. This was no longer standard espionage. This was personal. His phone buzzed. A message from Ramirez. O'Reilly talked. "Says he works for someone named Vull. That name ring a bell?" Jonathan stared at the screen, a cold chill spreading through his chest. Anton Vull, a ghost from his past, linked to the Syria operation that had taken out 5 enemy operatives. But one had escaped. Wounded, but alive. "Yes. Top priority. Meeting in the morning." "Double security at my house tonight," Jonathan replied. He set the phone down. His eyes drifted to Malik's sleeping face. The line he had once kept between work and family was gone, and the ghost from the past hadn't just returned. It was targeting the one person he loved most. By sunrise, the Carter home was running like a military operation. Jonathan had been in his office since 5:30 a.m. when his secure phone rang. "Martyr speaking," but Ramirez's voice came through. "Confirmed. Anton Vull is in the country. Facial recognition places him at a gas station in Maryland yesterday." "How did he get in?" Jonathan asked, lowering his voice to avoid waking Malik. "Diplomatic cover. Part of a trade delegation from Ukraine 3 weeks ago, then dropped off the grid." Jonathan gripped the phone. The last puzzle pieces were falling into place. "The school operation had dual objectives," Ramirez continued. "Yes, data collection was real, but according to O'Reilly, they had explicit orders, target your son. Kidnap?" Jonathan asked, though he already knew. "Yes." During the evacuation chaos, they planned to take Malik. Vull wants to use the boy as leverage. "Leverage for what?" A pause. "To force you to hand over the Blackfish file. Does that sound familiar?" Jonathan closed his eyes for a moment. Blackfish, one of the most classified operations he had ever led. A deep infiltration into the Russian intelligence network. They'd obtained unprecedented data. Vull had been part of that network. "I know what he wants," Jonathan said. Where is he now? Unknown. Last confirmed sighting was Maryland, 18 hours ago. He's still close, Jonathan said firmly. This is personal. He won't let someone else handle it. We've increased surveillance around your home and Jefferson Academy. All families on the list are under protection. Not enough, Jonathan said sharply. Vull's like a ghost. He won't come through the front door this time. What do you propose? Force him into the open? Use me as bait? That's extremely dangerous. Waiting for him to make the next move is even more dangerous, Jonathan replied. I'm heading to headquarters. We'll plan it in detail. Ending the call, Jonathan headed upstairs to check on Malik. The boy was still fast asleep, but Jonathan's chest bore a weight heavier than ever. Mistakes from his past had now placed his entire family in the crosshairs. Down in the kitchen, an agent was making coffee. Anything unusual overnight? Jonathan asked. All quiet, sir. Perimeter secure. Jonathan nodded and then froze. Through the kitchen window, he spotted a faint red dot moving across the wall behind the agent. Without hesitation, he lunged, tackling the agent to the floor. Glass shattered. A bullet pierced the window, slamming into the kitchen cabinet right where the agent's head had been moments ago. What had been a quiet morning exploded into chaos. Gunfire erupted from the front yard, glass shattered, and Jonathan Carter reacted instantly. "Sniper, get down!" he shouted, dragging the agent to the floor. Another round cracked through a downstairs window, embedding into the cabinetry. Outside, the security team returned fire, calling for backup over radio. Jonathan crawled toward the hallway, drawing his sidearm from an ankle holster. "Secure the upstairs. Malik is up there," he ordered. Two agents ran up the stairs. Gunshots continued to thunder, pinning them inside. Jonathan spoke into the radio. "Where's the shooter?" "Rooftop across the street, east side. No clear shot," an agent replied. A shout came from upstairs. "Sir, the boy's not in his room." Jonathan's blood ran cold. "What? The bed's empty, window locked from the inside? He has to be somewhere in the house." "Malik!" Jonathan shouted. "I'm in the safe room," Malik's voice called back nearby. Jonathan exhaled in relief. The safe room, hardened and hidden inside his home office, was something he had installed years ago. He'd only shown Malik once, explaining it was for emergencies. "Good job, son," Jonathan said quietly. "Stay there. Don't come out until I say it's safe." The gunfire suddenly stopped. The eerie silence only made the tension worse. Radio crackled. "Sir, sniper has disengaged." "Looks like it was just a distraction." "A distraction for what?" Jonathan muttered, then realized. "Check the back of the house. Now." Right then, a loud crash came from the kitchen, followed by screaming and more gunfire. Jonathan sprinted toward the noise, gun ready. Two men dressed in black had breached the back door. One was already down. The other returned fire from behind the kitchen island. "Bull's here for Malik," Jonathan shouted. "This is just the first wave. Get everyone inside." He fired 2 clean shots, forcing the intruder to retreat deeper into the kitchen. Agents stormed in from outside, surrounding the attacker. Finally, the man dropped his weapon and surrendered. Jonathan didn't stay to watch. He bolted to the office, to the safe room where Malik had been hiding. As he reached the door, he heard muffled sobbing inside. "Malik," he called out, "are you okay?" No response. Panic rising, Jonathan punched in the code. The door unlocked, and his worst fear became reality. The room was empty. Malik was gone. Only his phone lay on the floor. On the wall, in red ink, were the words, "The child in exchange for the file. You have 4 hours. Further instructions to follow." Jonathan stared at the message, unable to believe what had happened. The safe room was supposed to be impenetrable, unless it were already inside, he said aloud. The listening devices found yesterday hadn't been the only breach. Somehow, Vull's team had known the location and access code for the safe room. 20 minutes later, Ramirez arrived to a scene of chaos. Agents guarded the perimeter, forensics teams gathered evidence, and Jonathan Carter, normally composed in any crisis, paced his office like a caged animal. "How did they get the boy?" she asked. Hidden access to the safe room through the basement, Jonathan said tersely. A maintenance tunnel, not on the original plans. This has been in the works for months. How did they get past the security detail? Distraction, Jonathan replied. The sniper, the front assault. It was all a smokescreen while someone already inside took Malik. Ramirez stood amid the aftermath, eyes scanning every detail, committing every clue to memory. We'll get him back, she vowed. Not by playing their game, Jonathan replied, his voice steely and resolute. I'm not waiting for orders. What do you mean? Jonathan opened his laptop and launched a secure tracking program. Every field agent has a tracker embedded in their gear, he explained. The watch I gave Malik for Christmas last year, it has one too. I never told anyone. Not even him. You put a tracker on your son? Ramirez asked, stunned. Chronic precaution, Jonathan said without an ounce of regret. And now it might save his life. The program pinged. A blinking dot appeared on the map. He's moving, Jonathan said, eyes locked on the screen. Eastbound. Onto the highway. They haven't found the chip. I'll call in a tactical unit, Ramirez said, reaching for her phone. No, Jonathan stopped her. Too many people. Vol will spot it. We need a small team. Precise and invisible. You can't go alone, Ramirez protested. I'm not, Jonathan said. I need a driver, a sniper, and a comms officer. That's it. This is a complete breach of protocol, Ramirez warned. If it fails, my son is in the hands of a man who has every reason to make me suffer, Jonathan cut in. Protocol won't save Malik. I will. Ramirez was silent for a moment. Then she nodded. I'll drive. Williams will handle comms. Jackson is our best sniper, Ramirez added. Good. We roll out in 5. As the team prepared to move, Jonathan's secure phone buzzed with a new message. The file for the child. Delaware Industrial Complex, Building 17. Come alone. They've made contact, Jonathan said, handing the phone to Ramirez. Bracker's signal matches the location, she confirmed. But it feels like a trap. Of course it's a trap, Jonathan nodded. But at least now we know where Malik is. And they don't know. We know. The 4 of them moved like a trained unit, loading gear into an unmarked SUV. Jonathan ran a final check on his weapons. In his mind, memories of that mission in Syria returned like a storm. Anton Vol, a true monster. Brilliant, vicious, and ruthless. Jonathan had shot him once, thought it was over. But Vol escaped. And now, 5 years later, he was back, with a vendetta unfinished, and dragging Jonathan's son into it. As the SUV pulled away from the house, Jonathan made a silent vow. By the end of today, only one of us walks away. And for Malik's sake, that has to be me. The Delaware Industrial Complex was a maze of crumbling warehouses and decaying infrastructure. Once bustling, now it was a perfect hideout for clandestine operations. Building 17 sat on the edge of the complex. A massive concrete block with rusted iron doors and shattered windows. From nearly half a mile away, Jonathan used high-powered binoculars to scout the site. Malik's watch is still signaling from inside. Hasn't moved for 30 minutes, he said. 2 guards at the front entrance, 1 on the roof. Probably more inside, Jackson reported from a rooftop across the complex. I count 5 targets outside, patrolling in a loop. Well disciplined, he added. Not amateurs, Jonathan noted. These are trained men. Less than 2 hours until the deadline, Ramirez reminded them. What's the plan? She asked. Jonathan pulled up an old blueprint of the building on his tablet. Vol expects me to come through the front door with the file, ready to negotiate, but we're going to disappoint him. He pointed to a maintenance tunnel beneath the complex. This passage isn't on the updated schematics. They might not know it exists. We'll infiltrate from there. In the pitch black of the abandoned tunnel, Jonathan Carter moved forward silently, each step in sync with the tight beat of his heart. The small shoulder flashlight barely lit the way as he stepped over rusted debris and tangled wires. The air was thick with mildew and dust, like the place had been forgotten for years. Movement at the east entrance, Jackson's voice came through the earpiece. Details? Jonathan paused. Black sedan, 2 passengers. Guards waved them in. Looks like they're expected. New players, Ramirez noted from her position. Could complicate things, Jonathan muttered, continuing forward to a 3-way split in the tunnel. The tracker showed Malik was directly above the right-hand path. I'm directly beneath the main floor, he reported, scanning for access. The tunnel led to a rusty ladder rising toward a utility room. Jonathan climbed slowly, listening for sounds above. At the top, he tested the hatch. Locked from the outside, as expected. He attached a compact breaching charge designed to make a quiet pop rather than a loud bang. With a soft thump, the lock disengaged. Jonathan pushed the hatch open and slipped into a dusty, abandoned utility room filled with old cleaning supplies and broken equipment. He drew his weapon and crept toward the door. I'm inside, he whispered. All quiet outside, Jackson reported. Wait. Movement in a second-floor window. Visual confirmation. Child matching Malik's description. Northwest corner. 2 guards with him. Jonathan's pulse raced. His son was alive, but he stayed focused. Copy. Moving to second floor. The warehouse interior was cavernous, its central area surrounded by second-floor offices and walkways. From his vantage point, Jonathan spotted 4 armed guards patrolling the main floor, plus the 2 with Malik upstairs. Jackson, do you see Vol? No, he's inside for sure, but I haven't got eyes on him yet. Jonathan studied the layout. The stairs to the second floor were exposed, no cover. Any approach would be seen immediately. Then he noticed the freight elevator shaft against the far wall. Change of plan, he radioed. Using the elevator shaft to access the second floor, he moved along the perimeter, staying hidden in the shadows until he reached the shaft. The elevator car was stuck between floors, but the maintenance ladder offered a straight route up. He pried the doors open just enough to slip through, then climb. At the second floor, he paused, listening. Voices echoed faintly. One of them was deep and unmistakably accented. Anton Vol. Your father will be here soon, Vol said. For your sake, I hope he brings what I asked for. He's going to make you regret ever touching me, Malik replied, voice trembling but defiant. The sound of his son's voice, afraid but unbroken, fueled Jonathan's pride and resolve. He crept along the hall toward the voices. Jackson, he whispered. On my signal, I needed distraction. East side. Big. Copy that, the sniper confirmed. Standing by. Jonathan positioned himself outside the office where Malik was being held. Through the slightly open door, he saw a guard near the window. The other was likely behind the door, and Volo was speaking directly to Malik. Ramirez, are you in position? Jonathan asked softly. In place, she confirmed from the east entrance. Only a few guards here. I can breach when you give the word. Good. Everyone ready, Mark? At that instant, a blast thundered from outside. Jackson had detonated an explosive on an abandoned vehicle. Shouts erupted inside as guards scrambled to respond to the false threat. Jonathan seized the moment, burst into the room, and took down the first guard with a precise shot before the man could react. The second guard turned, weapon raised, but Jonathan was faster. 2 bullets to the chest dropped him instantly. Anton Vool stood behind an old desk, one hand gripping Malik's shoulder. He was still tall, his silver hair cropped short, icy blue eyes as cold as ever, and a long scar down his left cheek. The legacy of his last encounter with Jonathan. Carter, Vol said, his voice heavy but his English flawless. Right on time. Did you bring the file? Jonathan kept his gun trained on Vol, eyes scanning Malik for injuries. The boy appeared unharmed, though fear clouded his eyes. Let him go, Vol, Jonathan ordered. This is between you and me, Vol sneered coldly. There's no more just between us, not after what you did. He squeezed Malik's shoulder tighter, making the boy wince. The file, Carter. Or shall we see how many fingers your son loses before you cooperate? In his earpiece, Jonathan heard Ramirez's voice. "I'm inside, first floor's clear, moving to your location." He needed to keep Vol talking. "The file isn't worth this, Anton. You crossed a line, dragging my family into this." Vol snapped, his composure cracking. "You crossed the line first. Your Blackfish operation destroyed everything I built. My network, my reputation, my future. All gone because of you." "That was the job," Jonathan replied evenly. "It was never personal." "Well, now it is," Vol snarled, drawing a knife and holding it close to Malik's face. "The file, Carter. Last warning." Jonathan slowly reached into his coat as if retrieving something. The motion drew Vol's attention, long enough for Malik to spot the subtle nod from his father, the signal they'd practiced during self-defense lessons in the backyard. In one fluid motion, Malik drove his elbow into Vol's gut and dropped to the floor. Jonathan didn't hesitate. He fired, striking Vol in the knife arm. The blade clattered to the ground, but Vol quickly reached for the gun at his waistband. Before he could draw, Ramirez appeared behind him, gun raised and steady. "Federal agent." "Don't move." Cornered and wounded, Vol froze, his gaze locking with Jonathan's in one final moment of defiance. "It's over, Anton," Jonathan said, pulling Malik behind him. "This is only temporary," Vol hissed, smirking. "There will be others. Men like me don't disappear." "You're right," Jonathan replied as Ramirez cuffed Vol. "They go into maximum security and are forgotten." With Vol secured, Jonathan turned to Malik, dropping to eye level. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" Malik shook his head, then threw his arms around his father's neck. "I knew you'd come. I remembered what you taught me. Wait for the opening. Be ready." Jonathan hugged him tightly, the hardened agent giving way to a father's relief in this brief, precious moment. "You did great. I'm proud of you." Ramirez's voice cut in, breaking the reunion. "We need to move. There may still be hostiles in the area." Jonathan nodded, keeping Malik close as they exited the warehouse. The mission was a success, but he knew the threat wasn't over. Vol had resources and connections. The consequences would come, but for now Malik was safe. That was all that mattered. The story made national headlines, though most details remained classified. Across the country, the headlines read, "Pentagon official foils major security breach at D.C. private school linked to foreign intelligence plot." Jonathan declined all interviews despite primetime invitations. His only public statement was short and humble. "I did what any father would do." 3 days after the raid, life began returning to normal. The Carter home had been outfitted with upgraded security systems. A protective detail remained, but operated discreetly. Malik's mother had returned from Chicago, shaken but relieved to find her family safe. "Will you go back to Jefferson Academy?" Malik asked over breakfast, mentioning school for the first time since the incident. Jonathan and his wife exchanged glances. "Do you want to?" his mother asked gently. Malik considered it seriously. "I think I do. I don't want them thinking I'm afraid." Jonathan nodded, respecting his son's courage. "If that's what you want, I support it. But there will be some changes." Indeed, Jefferson Academy entered a period of unprecedented reform. Principal Hayes, shaken by the incident and the security failures it exposed, ordered a full audit of the school's infrastructure. But more significantly, he launched a comprehensive review of the institution's culture and inclusivity practices. Surprisingly, it was Ms. Anderson who stepped forward as a vocal advocate for change. The very next day, she requested a meeting with Principal Hayes to publicly admit her bias toward Malik and other minority students. Whether driven by genuine remorse or fear of job loss, she became an unlikely ally in the push for positive reform. When Malik returned to school the following week, accompanied by a covert security detail at Jonathan's insistence, he found his status had completely shifted. Once doubted and dismissed, he was now the center of admiration and curiosity. Even Tyler Whitman, who had relentlessly mocked him, approached with awkward sincerity during lunch. "My dad says your dad's like a huge deal, some kind of hero," Tyler mumbled. Malik shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "It's still just my dad. Ethan, ever the loyal friend." rolled his eyes at Tyler's sudden change in attitude. "So where was that respect when you were laughing at him?" Tyler flushed. "Yeah, sorry about that." Midway through lunch, Mrs. Anderson approached their table cautiously. The once confident, sometimes arrogant teacher now looked humbled and uncertain. "Malik," she said gently, "could I speak with you for a moment?" Malik looked at Ethan, who gave him an encouraging nod, and then stood up to follow Ms. Anderson to a quiet corner of the cafeteria. "I want to apologize again," Ms. Anderson began sincerely. "What I did was wrong. I made assumptions about you and your family, hurtful, prejudiced ones." Malik studied her face, searching for any trace of the familiar condescension, but all he saw was genuine remorse. "It's okay," he replied, though they both knew it wasn't completely true. "At least, not yet." "You're right, not yet," Miss Anderson nodded. "But I'm trying to make things right. I propose that Principal Hayes implement diversity training for the entire faculty. I'm also mentoring students from underrepresented backgrounds." Malik nodded. Not quite ready to forgive, but recognizing the effort. "It sounds good, and I'm starting a classroom project about bias and assumptions. Would you be willing to share your experience? Only if you're comfortable, of course." Malik was surprised. Just a month ago, Ms. Anderson wouldn't have given him the chance. "I'll think about it," he said. As he returned to the lunch table, Malik felt something he'd never truly experienced at Jefferson Academy, a sense of belonging. Not because of who his father was, but because he was finally being seen for who he really was. After school, Jonathan was waiting in the car as usual. The daily security check had become their new normal. "How was today?" Jonathan asked as Malik climbed in. "Fine," Malik said. "Miss Anderson wants me to talk to the class about bias." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "Quite a change from last week." "Yeah, I think she's really trying." As they drove home, and Malik noticed a black SUV following behind, no longer a threat, but now a shield. "Dad," Malik asked suddenly, "is Mr. Volk really gone for good?" Jonathan glanced at his son, considering how much truth to share. After everything that had happened, the Carter family had come to realize that shielding Malik entirely didn't guarantee safety. Still, Jonathan didn't want his 10-year-old to live in fear. "He's being held by the federal government," Jonathan said carefully, "and he'll be there for a very long time." Malik nodded, thinking it over. "But there are still people like him, right? That's why we still need protection." "That's right," Jonathan admitted. "My job sometimes creates enemies, but the protection is mostly a precaution. You don't need to worry." "I'm not worried," Malik said with surprising confidence. "I know what to do if something happens, and I know you'll always come for me." Jonathan felt a mix of pride and sorrow in his son's words. No child should have to think like that, but Malik was facing it with remarkable strength. "Always," Jonathan said. "That's a promise." 2 months after the warehouse incident, Jefferson Academy held its annual spring showcase, where students presented projects and performed for parents and the community. In past years, Malik had always taken a quiet role, staying behind the scenes, but this year was different. Inspired by everything he had experienced, Malik created a presentation titled "Looking Beyond the Surface, Challenging Our Assumptions." True to her word about changing, Ms. Anderson enthusiastically supported the project, providing resources, guidance, and full autonomy. The gym was packed with parents, teachers, and students moving between displays. Jonathan and his wife stood proudly as Malik confidently explained his project to curious visitors. "The point isn't that assumptions are always wrong," Malik told a group of listeners. "It's that they limit what we understand, unless we challenge them." Principal Hayes approached the Carter family and extended a hand. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, it's wonderful to see you both. Malik's project is outstanding." "Yes, it is," Jonathan agreed, shaking his hand. "He put a lot of thought into it." "We've made a lot of changes since the incident," Hayes continued. "New security protocols, of course, but also new programs to address bias and create a more inclusive environment. Malik has been instrumental in helping us see where we fell short." Across the room, they spotted Miss Anderson speaking with a group of other parents. She noticed the Carters, excused herself, and walked over. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter," she greeted them, respectful but no longer anxious. "I just wanted to thank you." "For what?" Jonathan asked, curious. "For not suing me." "Or the school," she said honestly. "You would have had every right, given the way I treated Malik. Instead, you gave us a chance to learn and do better." Jonathan looked at the teacher who once mocked his son. The change in her seemed sincere, though he knew transformations like this didn't happen overnight. "Everyone deserves a chance to be better," he said simply. As the showcase continued, Ethan joined Malik at his display. The two had grown even closer through everything they'd experienced together. Privately, Jonathan had arranged for Ethan's father to be offered a position at a federal contractor, a job that used his factory skills and provided better pay and stability. "Your presentation's the best one here," Ethan told Malik. "Even Tyler said so." Malik grinned. "Tyler's just being nice because he's still scared of my dad." "Smart kid," Ethan laughed. That evening, as families began to leave, Malik was surprised to see Agent Ramirez enter the gym, dressed in civilian clothes but still instantly recognizable, sharp eyes and purposeful stride. She approached the Carters, nodded at Jonathan, and turned to Malik. "Malik," she said, "I just wanted to say I was really impressed with your project. You showed maturity and insight well beyond your years." Malik blushed and thanked her. "Thank you, Agent Ramirez. Call me Elena," she smiled. "You did great." She turned to Jonathan. "We'll continue to monitor the situation. I'll reach out if anything comes up." Jonathan nodded. "Thank you, Elena." As she walked away, Malik turned to his father. "Dad, do you think everything's going to be okay?" Jonathan looked at his son, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "With your courage and intelligence, friends like Ethan, and support from people like Elena, I believe things will be okay." Malik smiled, feeling safe and deeply loved. And in that moment he knew that no matter what the future held, he would never be alone. "Your project was really impressive," Ramirez had told Malik when she arrived. "You're a very bright and composed young man." "Thank you," Malik replied, proud to receive praise from an FBI agent he respected so much. Ramirez turned to Jonathan. "There's something you should know. From the intelligence gathered during Volk's operation, we've identified a mole within the intelligence community. They're being dealt with." Jonathan nodded, understanding the weight of the revelation. "Good. Any remaining vulnerabilities?" "Nothing that poses a threat to your family," Ramirez assured him. "The threat level has been downgraded. You can begin to consider scaling back security." It was welcome news, though Jonathan knew true peace would never look the same again. Some changes were permanent. On the drive home, Malik stared out the window, watching the familiar streets of his neighborhood go by. The black SUV still followed quietly behind, once a sign of danger, now a quiet protector. But Malik knew its time was coming to an end. "Dad," Malik said softly, "I've been thinking about what I want to do when I grow up." "Oh?" Jonathan glanced at his son. "What's that?" "I want to work in cybersecurity to protect people like you do." A wave of emotion rose in Jonathan, pride mixed with concern. His work had brought danger into their lives, but his son saw only the purpose behind it. "That's a very noble goal," he said gently, "but you've got time. Don't decide just because of everything that happened." "It's not just because of that," Malik insisted. "I'm good with computers, and now I understand why your job matters." From the back seat, Malik's mother leaned forward. "If that's what you want, you'll be even better than your dad," she teased. "Because you're starting younger." Jonathan smiled at her reflection in the rearview mirror, grateful for the woman who had stood beside him through everything. When they arrived home, Malik paused at the door, glancing back at the black SUV parked a few houses down. "They're still watching us?" "For now," Jonathan said, "but it won't be much longer." That night, after Malik went to bed, Jonathan sat in his home office reviewing the final reports from the operation to capture Volk. He realized it wasn't just the school. His own home security had had holes. Lessons had been learned and measures had been taken. His secure line rang, a number only a handful of people could reach. The caller ID read, "The White House. This is Carter." "Mr. Carter, the President would like to meet with you tomorrow morning," said the voice on the other end. "It concerns Volk and national security implications." "I'll be there." After ending the call, Jonathan sat in silence for a few moments, gathering his thoughts about what he would say to the President. He would report the full extent of the foreign intelligence threat, but he also had another objective: securing additional funding for school security across the nation. A soft knock at the door broke his concentration. Malik stood there in pajamas, looking smaller than his age. "Everything okay, son?" Jonathan asked. "I'm fine. I just wanted to say good night again." Jonathan smiled, recognizing the gesture for what it was: his son's way of making sure his father was still there, still safe. Healing would take time. "I'm here," he said, opening his arms. Malik walked over and hugged him, tighter and longer than usual. "Dad, are we really going to be okay now?" "We won't just be okay," Jonathan said with conviction. "We're going to be better." When Malik returned to his room, Jonathan shut down his computer and followed him, pausing in the hallway to check the security system, a habit he knew he'd never quite give up. Outside, the black SUV remained parked, a quiet sentinel, a reminder of the danger they'd faced and everything they'd overcome. The Carter family had been tested in ways few ever are. They had faced fear, separation, and violence. But they had endured, stronger, more united, and more aware of the world around them. In his room, Malik stared up at the night sky, thinking about his school presentation, his father's work, and the wide-open future ahead. He whispered, "They used to doubt me. They used to doubt my dad. Not anymore." And in that simple truth he found the peace to drift into sleep.